Hi everyone, Kai here. Today I'll be doing a deck list, deck profile for Genesis Himiko in the V-Premium format. Now before I get into this, I'd like to give a shout out to my local card shop, Hobby Union BN. So I'll leave a link down below in the description to their channel, and please check them out. And for Brinds, support local. Now let's get to the deck list. So I have 4 Himikos for grade 3s, and as well as the new Himiko Reverse from the V-Clan Collection Volume 3, and for the last grade 3, Broad Antlered Dragon. Now Broad Antlered Dragon, what it does, I'm sure some of you don't know about this card, is that you Soul Blast 3 when you attack a Vanguard, and it basically just gains the trigger and critical effects your Vanguard that gain this turn. So with Himiko, you Soul Blast 5 and then you put a trigger from Soul in the bottom of the deck, and you activated your opponent's grade 3, so you activated 3 times. So you give all the trigger effects, all 3 of them, to your Vanguard, to your Himiko. And so this will also gain all the 3 trigger effects from your Vanguard. And there's another grade 2 that does the same thing, which we'll get to that later. So for grade 2, we have Free Ulysses. He's our resource getter, because when you attack Vanguard, whether hit or not, you activate a skill to go move to the soul. Okay, move to the soul. And then you just draw a card and soul charge 1. Very useful to get hand advantage, as well as filling up your soul. That's free. And then you have 4 of these Ligniers. He's your resource manager, and also your ride target as much as you can. If you have 1 counterblast, ride him or call him. Counterblast 1, you soul charge 1, and you take 1 card from your soul, put it into your hand. So it's a very toolkit card. So like if you have a chance to misride grade 3 and you happen to soul charge Himiko, you can use the skill to soul charge 1 and get Himiko back to hand. And you can play around with this. It's a very toolbox card. So he's your resource manager. You can get what you need from your soul. And of course, this grade 2 Repeller. This is also core attacker alongside Broad Antlered Dragon. Does the same thing, but it uses up 1 counterblast when you attack the Vanguard. You choose a unit, and it gains the power and critical that it gained this turn. So you basically target Himiko, and you'll gain those trigger effects. So that's all the grade 2 lineup. Moving on to grade 1s, we have 4 copies of Valencia. She also helps fill up the soul as well as draw cards. And when she is put into drop from soul, you can bind 1, and you pick 1 card from the drop, put it into soul, and 1 card from the drop back to the bottom of the deck. So you can basically, if you have a trigger here in the drop zone, you can basically put that trigger back into your soul and put a heal from the drop into the bottom of your deck. Of course, next is our grade 3 searcher for this, and you plus 5k whenever you soul blast this turn. It's only 1 time. It's a good beater, especially helpful when you want to deck thin or search any of the grade 3s. Especially in this case, you might want to search for this one if you don't have it in your hand. And last for grade 1 is one of your core cards, Apple Cider. It's really helpful when it's boosted and attack at the end of the battle. It boosted. You have 2 choices. You can soul charge 2 and it's left on the field, or you soul charge 1 and bounce it off to hand. So you can use it to fill up you fill up your soul early game, soul charge 2, and then when you get to 3 or grade 2, you can just soul charge 1 and bounce it back to hand. Now when it's in the hand is where it's really essential, because when you guard it, you can activate the auto skill. You can place 1 card from hand into your soul, and it's very useful, especially when you don't have a critical trigger in your soul for your Himiko. But we'll get to that later. Okay, so these are the grade 1 lineup. Okay, trigger lineups. We have 4 crits, 4 Guardian Heals, 4 other critical, as well as 4 draw Sentinels, and of course your basic star. So a lot of people play 6 draws and 6 crits. It depends on your playstyle, whichever one you want. I just went for the 8 crits and 4 draws here. So I've shown you the deck, so what is the game plan for Himiko? So Himiko, you basically want 5 in the soul, and you need to have a crit ready in her soul. So basically you need to have 6 cards in the soul to be able to use her skill. So let's set up a scenario. You ride up to grade 3 and you go to Force 1 or Force 2. Most of the time you'll be going to Force 1. So in your first ride, you put a Force 1 on your rear guard if you have any of the attackers. Sometime you'll go Force 2, but that's a different case. So let's say you have this, let's set up the board first. So you have the critical, and I'll put, okay, you have your attacker, okay, you have your Rappler here, right? So let's set up the board again. Okay, 5. So by the time you get to grade 3, so this is the ideal environment for your board. So what you want to do during your main phase, okay, you Soul Blast 5, and then you have to pick your critical, which from your soul, move to the bottom of the deck. And against, put it all to your Vanguard. 3 plus 3 crit and plus 3 30k. So essentially you have 4 damage here on your Himiko. You basically want to have your opponent at 2 damage. So basically when you attack with Himiko, okay, this is already a 51k with 4 damage. You basically want to have like all these 5 damage, for example. So when you attack, okay, they have to guard, maybe null it, okay, drive check, critical trigger, okay, you give it all to Vanguard. Second check, another critical trigger. Again, you just give it all to Vanguard. That is the ideal scenario. Just luck sec double triggers. And now they nulled it. You can activate your Cider skill to soul charge 1 and bounce her back to hand. Next attacker, counterblast 1, and it gains all these trigger effects from your Vanguard over to here. So basically, this is attacking for 78k power and 6 damage. They nulled this one, no problem. They already used up 4 cards in hand. Next, Braw Antler. Soul Blast 3, pay the cost. Gains the power and critical from your Vanguard. So this is also hitting for 63k power and 6 damage. So this is basically the one hit KO, the one punch man, however you want to call it, game plan. Okay, you want, when you first ride Himiko, just kill them off. Ideally you want to go second, but if you go first, it's a different story. You can play around with it. You can attack their rear guard or attack the Vanguard. Just basic. Make sure you just plan out how much damage you want to take during that turn. Let's say they still survive. They have miraculously 3 nulls in hand. So they used up 6 cards in hand. Right? Now you can use reverse Himiko's skill. Put these to soul, ride Himiko, and you gain another force marker. This time you can put it on Vanguard. And reverse Himiko fixes what the normal Himiko's weak to. Because after you attack with Himiko and they got it and everything, you're kind of dead in the water. But with reverse Himiko, it kind of fixes that, because you can work with it defensively or offensively. When your Vanguard is attacked, you can use 1 counterblast and choose a card from soul, whether it's critical or draw trigger. In this case, draw trigger, lock it. Okay, you draw 1 card because of her skill, and you activate the trigger effect of that lock card. In this case, draw trigger. So it's 23k base, as well as you can draw another card. So you have 2 additional cards in your hand to defend with. And if you're like, I don't know, 3 damage something, you take damage, you luck sack more defensive triggers. You'll get more power to defend yourself. This is very strong, especially against Axel decks, because they do multiple attacks. If you hit your defensive triggers, they can't do much. So it moves on to your turn. Depending on the situation, if you have another Himiko in hand, you can ride her. But if you are staying on Himiko, this is staying locked. And how this works offensively now is that this is still locked. Alright, keep that in mind. When Himiko attacks, counterblast 1 to pay the cost for Himiko reverse, and you choose a trigger from soul, in this case critical, lock it, and activate, oh yeah, and you draw a card of course, and activate the trigger effect for how many lock cards there are. So you lock the critical and you can activate it twice. 43k power, 3 damage. Rappler can do the same thing. Pay the cost of counterblast and you just gain the power crit. In the worst case scenario, if you don't drive check any trigger, then yeah, you just gain that much. So that is how you work with the reverse Himiko offensive. If you do manage to survive this turn and you have another Himiko in hand, you can basically do the same thing. Right up, and you gain a force marker again. Okay, let's say just put it on here, and again we use the same scenario we used earlier of having just one Rappler. Alright, Soul Blast 5 and put a critical from Soul. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and put this critical back to the bottom of the deck. Activate it 3 times. Now if you look at what I Soul Blasted out, Valencia. So what it does now, Valencia, since Soul Blasted out, I can bind Valencia, choose a card from my drop. So let's say I have a crit, I can put in Soul, and then I can also pick a trigger from drop. Okay, let's say, or any card basically, so I can just put it in the bottom of the deck. So now this Himiko is hitting for 53 to the Vanguard. Okay, you just twin drive, trigger, hold the Vanguard, second check, hold the Vanguard. Okay, you luck sack. You attack with Rappler, counterblast 1, gains all that 70k power and 4 damage. Very high powered in just one Vanguard. So that is assuming you're on your second ride on Himiko. But basically your game plan is to always kill them on the first Himiko ride. Everything else afterwards is a contingency plan. Well, that's how I play my Himiko. Okay. There are other ways to play Himiko, and I've seen people who play the Regalia variation. What they do is have a Himiko, and this is where they play Force 2. So I'll set up the board. So they run to Himiko, play Force 2, okay, and they call Yggdrasil, counterblast 1 to call a Norn, and put a Divine Gauge underneath. Alright. When you activate Himiko's effect, you just give it all to your Yggdrasil. And because it has a Force 2, it is essentially hitting for 53, because you're boosting it with Norn, 53 with 5 damage, 5 crits in total. Which means you can lock your opponent at 1 damage with this variation. And when you pay the cost for Norn, okay, Divine Gauge, discard a card, restand, and attack again. It gets plus 10k, minus 1 drive, 53k, and 5 damage. A lot of decks plays around with the Yggdrasil and Norn combo. That's basically how this whole Himiko game plan works. Okay, I hope this helps anyone who are interested in building a Himiko deck build. Alright, so if you have any other comments or would like to ask something about the deck build, just give a comment down below, and just give like this video, give a like. If you want to see more content in the future, more Vanguard content, give it a subscribe. I'll gladly appreciate it. Okay. I hope to see you guys soon.